everyone to this session. My name is Erki Saluveer. I am from a company called Positium, as well from University of Tartu, as well as Positium is the spin-off company. And I'm glad to lead that session on mobility data for official statistics. And this is an important session in that regard that we will now go through 5 presentations on how the research is put in use in one very important domain, is the statistical production. So we will hear a presentation from Eurostat, so what they are up to, and then 4 different use cases from Sweden, Netherlands, then Lithuania, and finally Oman. So what they have done, and not holding it up here too long. So I'm happy to introduce the first presenter, which is from Fabio Ricciato. He's from Eurostat Unit A5. The unit is dealing with methodology innovation in official statistics. And his presentation, Reuse of Mobile Network Operated Data for Official Statistics, a European Perspective, will be broadcasted on video. Unfortunately, he's under quarantine, so let's enjoy the presentation through video. Thank you.
Okay, so good morning, everybody. Thanks for giving me the opportunity to intervene in Mobile Tartu 2022. What I'm going to do in these short interventions to give a bird's eye view of how Eurostat see the prospective use of MNO data for official statistics, where we are, where we want to go, and how to get there. I don't need to tell in this audience how interesting is the promise of MNO data for measuring certain phenomena related to human presence and mobility. The level of timeliness, coverage, spatial and temporal continuity that you can get from MNO data are unmatched by all other data sources. And for these reasons, we are very much interested in taking the benefit of MNO data for official statistics. But at the same time, we also know that there are very big challenges to be addressed, both on the data access and on the technical and methodological aspects. So I would say it's a big gain that we're aiming for, but also there is a big pain to be paid. Let's have a look at the current situation in the European Union. It does not look super favorable in the sense that, for instance, when it comes to legislative framework, you have to understand that the reuse of MNO data for official statistics impinge on 3 different legal domains: the statistical law, the telecom law, and the data protection law. And these 3 domains and their articulation has certain differences in different member states. So we have, because of national specificities and national provisions, so we have a quite heterogeneous legal framework in different member states. We have seen some cases of voluntary partnerships between NSI and MNO that have been flying. However, the case of success, let's say, are relatively few. We have much more cases where the partnership could not be started. We also have cases where the partnership was started, lasted maybe some years, and then was abruptly terminated for some reasons. And anyway, even the success story here have certain limitations when you look at the requirement of official statistics. On the methodological aspects, almost always statistics, experimental statistics, so not regular production, but experimental statistics based on MNO data, tend to reuse proprietary methods developed by the MNO or by other companies that remains proprietary to a large extent, if not completely proprietary, and they are communicated only to some extent, only partially. So which cause problem in terms of comparability and quality. These are the limitations of the few partial success case study, success partnership models that we have seen today. So it's a little bit suboptimal, the current situation. If we have to picture the desirable future state, so the point that we want to achieve, in a few years. Well, first of all, we would need to build a sustainable partnership between statistical institute and MNO that are able to ensure a continued and guaranteed reuse of MNO data for official statistics. As a prerequisite, this requires a harmonized legislation across the EU, which means some change to the legislative framework, in order to have a balanced rights and duties both for the NSI and for the MNO. So, and also thanks to this harmonized legislation, we have to design fair partnership models that are sustainable for both parties, for the MNO and the NSI. So this also requires covering a number of other issues, business sensitivity, recovery of certain costs, etc. On the methodological part, we aim at having a common and open methodology for the transformation of MNO data into statistics that is developed and adopted in the whole European statistical system, in the whole USS. We need to have standardized definition and common methods that are openly documented, ideally that rely on a reference open source code implementation. Standardized and common does not mean rigid. So we also have to produce a methodological framework that is sufficiently flexible to adapt to the different conditions of the different infrastructures, of the different mobile infrastructures, and is also evolvable by design, because not only the data format and semantic change following the physiological evolution of the mobile technology, but also our understanding of how to best transform data into statistics will evolve. And we have to do all that without compromising the privacy, the privacy rights of the mobile users. We believe that it's possible to have methodological sound statistics without compromising the protection of privacy. And privacy has to be the very first on top of the list of requirements when you design the technical aspects of data access and the methodology. Last but not least, we should aim from the very beginning to produce statistics based on multiple mobile network operator data. Even in the same countries, we don't want to have an NSI being dependent on a single MNO, but to produce statistics that come from the combination of at least the biggest 3 or 4 operators in each country, in order to have a complete market coverage, but also mitigate, say, dependency and quality issues at a single MNO. This is the desirable future where we want to get, where we want to arrive. What the European Commission, in particular Eurostat, are doing to get there. I would like to mention on the legislation aspect, so on the data access, 2 important initiatives. The first one was the initiative taken by Eurostat to set up an expert group on facilitating the use of new data sources for official statistics, where new data sources refers most prominently to privately held data. This was established by Eurostat last year, and the final report of this expert group is upcoming, should be published next month, in a matter of weeks. These are independent experts that are advising the European Commission in view of improving the legal framework. I don't want to anticipate too many details, but I invite you to read the final report as soon as it comes out, and you will see it's quite an articulated settings that the experts have outlined, with multiple provisions and recommendations directed also at the European statistical systems, at the public authorities, and to the business, of course. The second important initiative is the kickoff of a process for amending the Regulation 223 from 2009 on European statistics. This is a regulation that was already amended in 2015 to extend to administrative record, administrative data sources, and the aim of the new revision that is starting now will include the extension towards privately held data as a possible data sources for official statistics. The process of review of the regulation has started earlier this year, and we plan to have a proposal adopted by the European Commission in early next year. And from there, we'll already, of course, continue with the negotiation with the co-legislature, the Council and the Parliament. So it will not be the end of the story, but an important milestone next year. On the side of the methodology, I would like to mention briefly what has been done in the past. So the ESS, Eurostat has funded the Big Data SNet, so-called business research grant, that had one very successful work package dedicated to MNO data. I invite you to follow the link to access the deliverable and the outcome of that work. We have set up a task force focused on working out the methodological issues for transforming MNO data in official statistics. This was started in 2021 and gathers experts from the NSI within the ESS. It's still up and running, of course. And a very concrete and important milestone was the launch of an open call for tender a few weeks ago, aimed at co-developing an open source data processing pipeline, co-developing between experts from the statistical system, from the NSI, and from the business, so whether MNO or specialized companies, with the idea of developing, as I said, an open source reference implementation oriented from the very beginning to build statistics based on multiple MNO data sources. So particularly multiple MNO within the same country, and of course across different countries. I invite you to read the technical specification in the links provided in the slide, and of course also consider to apply for it. This is an open call. Final, I would like to close this very short intervention with a few final remarks. We are now in a transition from one-off exploratory projects, so under the term of experimental statistics or even research work. We have to transit from this to the regular production of continued regular official statistics, and this is a big step. This is a big challenge that requires solving a number of different issues altogether on data access, on legal, business aspects, technical, methodology, etc. Either we found a decent solution to all these challenges, or there will be no official statistics, regular statistics based on MNO data. Second, I would like to be very clear. Official statistics, including those that will be prospectively based on MNO data, cannot compromise on certain dimensions like methodological transparency, like quality, sustainability and continuity of the statistical production, and therefore of the access to the data, impartiality and independence. So again, if official statistics based on MNO data will happen, they will have to reach minimum levels of transparency, quality, etc. I would like to stress once more the importance of taking a multi-MNO orientation from the beginning of the work. So we aim at having statistics based on data from multiple MNO, also in the same country, for many reasons. To mitigate dependency from the quality incidents that might happen at a single MNO, to improve therefore the quality, but also to ensure a level playing field between the competing MNO within the same country. Sometimes it's easier to get 3 or 4 MNO on board rather than just one, if the legislative framework is prepared to do so. And last but not least, I would like to stress that we do not see a legal framework as a way to replace the need to have a successful win-win partnership between NSI and MNO, but on the contrary, legal framework as a cradle to promote and push and facilitate towards sustainable NSI and MNO partnerships. So statistics based on MNO data have to be done together between NSI and MNO in a sustainable, fair, balanced partnership model, which we are hoping are contributing to build for the future. And with this, I finished. I invite you to follow up with the link given in the presentation for more details about the initiative that I've touched. Thanks.
So thanks for the presentation from Fabio, and he gave us now the framework of how European Commission sees the production of statistics from mobile phone data and what are the actions. And now let's hear some of the cases where it's already put in use, and let's see if they fit into the framework or not. I'm happy to introduce the first presenter, Peter Vlag from Statistics Sweden, and the presentation says it all. The name of it, mobile phone positioning data and official statistics. So floor is yours. Thanks.
Yes, so introduction, we have 4 mobile phone operators in Sweden. We have contacted all of them, and we have contracts now with Telia, that's the biggest one, and another one, a small one, Tre. And we speak about that we get anonymized and aggregated data. Our project started just before the pandemic. It was first explorative. Then after the pandemic, we had the collaboration intensified because due to some quality issues, the general picture was, okay, the trends, what we saw in difference in population, movements were correct, but it was difficult to estimate the exact amplitude. So there we worked on, and from 2022, we have a government assignment. And the government assignment handles about 3 things: the conditions about using these data for official statistics, to check whether some questionnaires in the tourism or travel commodity service can be replaced, but especially also the development of new smart statistics. And the reason I will focus on that point in this presentation, because we know we have some issues with data access. There are some methodological challenges, but it seems for official statistics that only the business case is not enough to only replace tourism and travel commodities questions with it. So you need to have the broader perspective. And there is also an interest of the government to develop out the broader conceptions perspective, because all know that the data are explored for travel analysis, mobility patterns, but what is the quality of these data? Just about the process, what I can say a little bit, I will focus on a little bit in that in Sweden, especially by Telia, it's driven by strong ethical privacy rules. Basically, it drives the process. The result is activities and trips on a grid, basically, and where we focus on is basically the relationship between the SIM cards we measure and the populations. And you have to know you have not only deal with the fact that you have only operators, not only all operators, but especially in Sweden, there are 10 million people, but 15 million SIM cards. So that's the challenge we focus on. I won't discuss that too much a little bit in this presentation. We will focus on a little bit what we have. We have so aggregated data. We are more or less dependent of MNO's processes because we aggregate it. So what do we need for official statistics? Collaboration, and there we started on with Telia. We needed descriptions, we got them. They are secret now under statistical law, and we need to do the quality assurance. And what we did also say, we need the data delivered at a very low aggregation level, just to with a tiny resolution to check the reliability. So basically what we do, we ask the data on the lowest aggregation level and check them even there with all other statistical information we have, like population statistics, income statistics, and things like that, education, just to get an idea about. So as a kind of alternative for microgrid, they have there the plausibility checks. What levels do we get? 5 levels, basically grid level, district level, community level, etc. And we have times here from 2019, so if you look enough at the data, you see a lot of issues in it. And now the question, what can we do with these data? And I have the example from Stockholm municipality, its activity estimations, population estimates, dynamic related from activities. The night populations are dark green, and we do see a seasonal pattern, basically with lower populations in Stockholm municipality in the summer, but also around Christmas, etc. What we did see before the pandemic in Stockholm municipality, we did saw a higher day population, and the idea was, and that can be explained a little bit, that people travel to Stockholm municipality to work there or to go to school, I don't know. We did see after the COVID that disappeared, and then it slowly recovers again, and the light green is during weekdays, and we did not see that pattern during weekends. So we see seasonal patterns and weekday patterns. This is the opposite, Jokkmokk municipality, sparsely populated, but the largest in terms of services, closely related to the Arctic Circle. Night population, also a seasonal pattern. But what we do see that more people spend the nights there in the weekends than during weekdays, and that had everything to do with a typical Swedish phenomenon. It's basically the weekend commuters. People who live in a small area and go to this bigger towns to work there during the week. So we have a lot of characteristics can derive out of these data. I will skip it quickly about it. We have a kind of classification of municipalities in Sweden, varying from cities, suburbs to in blue, till small towns, really small towns, and tourism areas. And basically, if you go over it a little bit, you see basically all have their own little bit kind of time series in terms of population, dynamic population estimates. And it can also work the other way around. From all those characteristics of the population activity estimate, dynamic population estimate, you can also classify municipalities. And basically you come to a similar classification as what you derived beforehand. So what do we think what is very useful from statistics we can produce out of these data? We think we can replace some questionnaires in tourism and travel commodities, but what is a really good official statistics about it is seasonal variation in dynamic populations. We know we have in Sweden municipalities where in Sweden in summer there are about twice or 3 times more populations than registered. It's not only tourism, but it has also to do with the second houses, and also less. And such kind of statistics about dynamic populations can be really useful for government assignments due to state agencies, local health authorities, and things like that. So I think that is one path we should follow, develop further out. And again, you can make nice pictures around it, even at lower level, and related also to travel out from Stockholm. You can do a lot of these things. The other thing is a little bit the day-night populations. Again, we have, as shown in Stockholm, we have the urban centers people travel to during the work days, and the suburbs they travel from, and you can easily show that a little bit from in-outbound travels. Here the red are the suburbs where people leave. We have more out commuting during the morning, and in a sense more in commuting during the morning, and the evening you see the opposite. And we can make nice pictures about higher day and night population effects of pandemic. And we think a kind of official statistics about it, it's a really good thing for official statistics, because it also matches these data, which are very valuable for commercial value, and that's why MNOs work on it, to make the official language. It gives a kind of framework for these data. And they enrich also the official statistics, because the official statistics are now often static based on registered data. These are really dynamic data. So what are basically the conclusions and challenges? We speak about a complex data of methodology, especially the step from mobile phones to human beings. Quality, we think if you don't have microdata and Swedish operators do not want to give it, you have to check them at the lowest aggregation level. We think the trend seems plausible, but the trick is to have a method which needs to be very robust against subtle changes in things. What is good, what did one of the operators in Sweden very good, that they really communicated very clear privacy aspects, so that was accepted. Yeah, and the last one, this last minute, what is needed, I think, it's reading that to get the business case, to get more and establish access to the data, we really have to position the output which is needed for official statistics versus the commercial output. You have to find a win-win situation that is needed for official statistics. That's a kind of quality benchmark. And yeah, to have a win-win situation, that's the trick basically. And what is needed for that, I think a legal framework should support this, and basically also its partnerships. And basically what is also needed a little bit, you need a kind of a quality standard just for the MNO data processing, what's done at the operators, but also what is done at the official statistics. So that's a little bit the conclusion from our side.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Peter. So please write down all your questions for Peter that you have. But I already see some connections to what Fabio was talking about, so the challenges. So there seems to be already ongoing process on it. So I'm delighted to lead in another example of using privately held data for official statistics. So we switch from mobile phone data now to other data sources that you could use as well. So Matthias Offermans from Statistics Netherlands will present public transportation data for official statistics. So Matthias, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. My name is Matthias Offermans and I'm from Statistics Netherlands. I'm a senior project manager, but I'm also working and an expert on mobile phone data. But it's not what I'm going to talk about today. Let's see how it... I got the right one, sorry for that. So I'm going to talk about public transport data. And to give you an idea about the Netherlands, what is the Netherlands? I have this nice picture. I haven't made it myself, but I find it's quite illustrative to put everything into perspective. If you look at the Netherlands, it's the same, almost the same country size like Estonia. It's only 10% smaller. But the interesting is we have 10 times more people, 17.7 million. And so it's a very high dense population, comparable to a city. So you can see it as a country, but you can also see it as an empty megacity. And therefore we have a large network of public transport, and which is also quite exceptional. And an average person has like 1,488 kilometers in train, stays there many hours, and also bus, tram, and subway are really used a lot in the Netherlands. So we had a system for this in the past 50 years, which was just buying a ticket for a bus, which is very practical. But that was the old situation, because we also had a problem, because suddenly we privatized the whole transport sector. And instead of one big government company, one transportation office, we have many companies who support trams, buses, and trains. And if you look at this map, you see on the left the buses and trams and trains, and you see all the companies who are actually exploiting them. Below that, there is also a list with all lines with exceptions, so that's also quite complicated. You see it, and on the right, because the Netherlands has a lot of water, so there you see also the public transport on water. Yeah, so which is also at least 8 companies that use it. So about 10 years ago, we used a national system so that people can just use to make their travel, because you need more transportation companies to make your trip. So we used an NFC tech card we introduced that can support multi-travel mode. And this is what the data look like. It's completely different than having mobile phone data. It's still a big data source and a big data set, because millions of people are using it every day, every hour, so the system is constantly running. So you have a card ID. Some people have just like a SIM card. More phones have multiple cards. You can, on that card, you can put on several kind of products with discounts. There are like 1,800 different products you can use. And some variables are really interesting for statistics. I'm making official statistics. So what we're now investigating is, okay, can we use these data for making railway statistics, for example? And what we are going to do probably is now this year is looking at the data. I mean, of course, we think about privacy and data minimization. And this is just a list of the variables we're going to use to make these official statistics, which is quite short, I think. So how does the system work? Just to give you an idea. If you go to the Netherlands, you go to a port and then you use the card to check in. That's logical. It's just like buying a ticket. But if you get off the bus, you have to check out, because then the journey ends. And then if you go, for example, to a train or to another bus company that has to bring you to the next ride, you have to check in again, and then you have to switch. So sometimes you see these poles where you can check in and out, and you have to switch between them and then check in at the other one. So this is different than different. And actually, it's just you can see it as a payment method. So just like a banking card, you have an amount on the card, and you can use, and then when you check out, the transaction actually takes place centrally. That looks quite simple. We had a simple data set, but if you look, of course, you also have customers who you have complete transactions. That's easy. You check in, check out, but some people forget. They forget to check out or check in. So for the data processing, you need a lot of correction and imputation to correct. So this is also a new phenomena. We all used to work with mobile phone data and see how unclean they are, and we need all these measures to do that. So this is just an example of the processes, one of the quality check processes we have for using these public transport data. What is the final output we are going to use it for? There are actually three main statistics we want to use this for. So one is HICP and DPI. So these are inflation indexes. You want to know all these products. I said there are like 1,600 products you can put on the card, and you want to know the price, and you want to know the price development to get a good price index. But you also want to make railway macro statistics. You want to know how many people take the train, how many people take the bus, how many kilometers do they travel, how many hours do they spend during travel. And just like already as I talked about, if you talk about making official statistics, things get a different scale. You have a national level, so you have to talk to all these transport companies, which is quite complex. There's also a special clearinghouse company. It's called Translink. They take care of all the transactions. So you also have to protect the commercial interest of them, because everything is quite company sensitive. Then, of course, you have the legal framework. Privacy first, of course, because location is everything, but it's also everything for privacy. So that's really important. So we took really a lot of effort to investigate privacy, how to protect this. And it's actually being not only protected by the GDPR, but it's also, as a statistics office, we have Statistics Netherlands, it's called CBS in our Dutch language. We have a CBS law, and it protects the data extra for police and other investigators. So the data are only allowed to make statistics and for scientific reasons, and you are not allowed to use this for any other purpose, like fraud detection or whatever. So we have also an obligation to make these statistics. Eurostat obligates us to come up with these macro statistics. And they force us actually also by law to make these statistics because they are important for new infrastructure investment and so on. So these outcomes are really important. You know, it's also the taxpayer who's paying for the infrastructure in the end. And then if you have the legal framework, everything in place, then you can think about processes and method, how to do it in a safe way, how to do it in a good way. And their way is start simple, not doing too many experiments with knowledge and technology you're already used to, because in the end you have to get to a production system. And then there's a thing that's often underestimated. You also need social acceptance. So you need to invest in ethics. You need to have boards. You need to ask the boards of travelers, all these commissions on privacy first and so on, all these people who are concerned about privacy. So we also talk to them and had them analysis on that. And then in the end, you need to communicate and be very transparent. How do you process the data? What kind of data are you using of these of the average citizen? So this is actually now the current state of play. We did legal investigation with researchers and processing, data handling. We did the coding, the programming. So now it's time to communicate. And the last step is actually to send a formal letter to these offices and, okay, please, we would like to access the data. So that's the final step in our process, which is in a few months going to be planned. But before that, we need corporate communication to be very transparent about what we're going to do, because we know we're using sensitive data of millions of people. Maybe interesting for you too, we already started with some experiments and also with some data analytics. So this is, maybe I put in the QR code if you want to see. And this shows also the effect of COVID, for example. So here you can see the effect of checks in, checks out on the public transport. And you see in 2020, it's quite dramatic. Almost nobody used the train anymore. So this gives you a nice example how, and also on a weekly basis, how you can use the data. So yeah, I just see I have 1 minute, so it's time for questions, but maybe that's for later.
Yes. Huh. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. And I think it is relevant to look on the other possible data sources as well that could be used for statistical production from privately held data sources. And obviously that is very clear thing to try out. So I'm happy that we can learn all what you are doing in Statistics Netherlands. So I'm happy to now introduce the next presenter. Now we moved towards Lithuania, and Mantas Putrimavicius will present presentation with the name of Statistics Analysis of Foreign Visitors in Lithuania using mobile positioning data. And he is from company Positium from Lithuania. And we will hear what they have done with mobile phone data and what are their plans. So floor is yours.
Thank you, Erki. Can you hear me? Okay, perfect. Thanks for introduction. I'm really glad that I am able to be here and speak with you about what we did in Lithuania. Erki introduced me as one of the members of company Positium. So this company is established by me just last year. And I am trying to be that bridge between public sector institutions and MNOs and also the data processing companies. Because I see that this mediation is what we are lacking. We need a lot of different institutions and companies for these projects to be successful. And this is why I believe that my services would be required for a long time. And today I want to share with you a story about our first customer, which is Travel Lithuania, and what we achieved. So to begin with, a quick background. So Lithuania Travel is our national tourism development agency in Lithuania. And they are searching for an alternative ways how to collect data about foreign tourists, mainly because traditional methods for the tourism community is not sufficient. So they do not want to wait for a month or 3 months to get access to the statistical data, how many tourists came to Lithuania. They want to have this much quicker. And our goal was to use mobile data to help collect this statistics and use it together with local governments and local businesses to introduce new services and products for tourists. This means that we need to prioritize in which places we need to invest so that the tourist overall would experience the best quality that we can offer in Lithuania. And at this point, I really want to thank Lithuania Travel, who who asked with courage to be the first to do this, and also our partners. So we use data from local MNO called Tele2. So it's a regional one. You probably know it. And all the methodological guidance and actual work was done by Positium. So all four of these companies have done this project. So a quick overview of the project timeline. So the idea of having mobile data for the tourism statistics was for many years. But only in the early spring of 2021, Lithuania Travel actually began to work on this, how to make it. And the longest part was the procurement process. So all these technical requirements, legal documentation, and all these procedures took for us almost half a year. So that's including the customer side and our side. And we started the project in September, November last year. So a couple of months was required to establish technical infrastructure at the MNO side. So Tele2 actually owns the servers, and the actual data never leaves MNO. And the pilot project started in December 2021, and it took only 3 months to get all the statistical data that we needed. So all the adaptations, methodological adaptations for a country of Lithuania was done in 3 months. And all the other time was spent to communicate, to teach, to learn, to train people who will actually use this project. So methodology is what probably most interesting for you. So a quick note from me, what I feel is important about this project. So the mobile network operators data that we used, I already mentioned, it's Tele2. We used only inbound data, so no domestic data was used in our project. And we used CDR and DDR data from the period of 6 months. So this is the time period in which MNOs can store the data. And the methodology that how to make actual statistics out of this data is quite sophisticated and complex. The methodology is created by Positium and delivered. So you can see here major steps that was needed, but actually there was much more. I just want to focus your attention on steps 4, 6, and 8, which mention data cleaning procedures. And I believe that from our experience, it was very important that Positium clean the data. We wanted to get rid of all the technical things like trucks who are driving in Lithuania, or accidental connections to Lithuanian network, or ships that are sailing through. So these are, I think, very important things. And another one is adaptive grid. So this was also a unique data set prepared for Lithuania. And this grid for Lithuania was prepared using various other sources of data. So we used network coverage areas, road density, population density, existing buildings, land use, to prepare various density, the grid of various density. And all the statistics are aggregated into this new grid cells. This helped us to achieve the maximum data density that we wanted. We want to see where foreign tourists were in the most detailed way possible. So this grid all helped us a lot. And last thing about methodology is the probabilistic nature of it. So then we have a grid. We only know the direction from the cell tower to the cell phone. And as you can see, there might be quite few grid cells that are covered by the same part of the direction from the cell tower. Positium actually developed an algorithm that aggregates data about foreign tourists into the grid cell that has the highest probability of detecting a person there. How this probability is determined? So it is determined by the density of roads, existing buildings, and etc. Things that may attract people to that location. So the data is not that clear, but it is a very good approximation of where people might have been. And the results. So we concluded with 8 different indicators to monitor behavior of foreign tourists. It's unique visitors, probably it's self-explanatory. It's also trips and stays. So one trip can have several stays. One-day visitors, also trip first stays and trip last stays. These 2 indicators may show where people entered the country or started their holidays, for example, in Lithuania, and from which place they left the country. It's not that accurate, but it might be used as an indicator, and how much time they spent here. We created several dashboards, but I want to show you this one which has most detailed data. So as we know, this might be the first time in the world then someone opened such detailed data for the public. So here you can see the Lithuanian map, the dots, which represents how many stays where we are in each grid cell. You can filter out them by the nationality, the country of origin, by date or other parameters. Then you zoom in, you can see all the tourism attractions that may have attracted people to that location. And you can still see and select each grid cell and see how many foreign visitors there were at the time that you are interested in. So in this way, we can start understanding who and where are traveling in Lithuania and prioritize investments in the places where they would get the best results. And to conclude, how to get back? A little bit about next steps. So now we are training the local businesses and governments to actually use this data. And there are a lot of other things that we want to do. But in this panel, I just wanted to also mention that at this point, this data cannot be labeled as official statistics because it is not done by Statistics Lithuania at this point. But we are working now, and I am happy that I have colleagues from Lithuania Travel and Lithuania Statistics here, and we are discussing how to convert it sometime in the future to the official statistics. And I hope that this project has begin building bridges to that future. And what lessons we learn? So these lessons are learned from me as a project manager and this mediator between institutions. So take time to build trust. We started communicating much earlier than the project started or the procurement started. I personally met with people who would be involved in this project, and that was very important because in projects like these, there are a lot of questions, and that we need to build trust. I already talked about procurement, that we need to prepare for that we need to do more with procurement procedures. Technical equipment, at least in our case, we had some issues at the beginning, but later on everything was all right. And there was some mention about how to communicate, and that the public opinion might be not that supportive for projects like these. So prepare communication plan in advance. We worked with Tele2 and Lithuania Travel PR agencies for months to figure out how to answer questions that may arise for the public. Yeah, and last thing about the budget, it's always the same in these projects. But in case of public procurement, all the over budgeting goes to the people who are implementing the solution. And that's it. So thanks for your attention.
Thank you very much, Mantas, and thank you for the lessons learned. That's always very valuable for the others. So now we turn to the last presenters, and that's in plural because we have two of them. The presentation will start from Oman. So we will have Majid Said Al-Buzaidi from Oman Statistical Office. He's the director of the Smart Data, and he will give a short intro into the project, and then it will follow up by my colleague Kertu Pilsas from Positium to explain what was done with the project, so what were the results. So first video, please.
So good morning. Actually, here in NCSI, always we are trying to adopt modern, advanced technology to serve statistical work. So the aim actually of this pilot project was to conduct a limited proof of concept that showed the possibility and limitation of using a mobile phone data for generating a statistical indicator. So here we are going to talk about the mobile positioning data pilot project, where it serves our NCSI to investigate the possibility of using the mobile data for serving the statistical work, and also to investigate the visibility of using mobile data for a process tourism indicator and mobility indicator. So the first phase is acquiring the data with an output of quality assessment for mobile network operator, DARO data, I mean. Second phase is the methodology adoption to Oman to meet our local requirement. The third one is the result like interactive application for the tourism, for mobility, and for the statistical and dissemination material like interactive application map, animation, and graph, and so on. Here also the mediator itself. Module platform consists of several modules and sub-modules, which can be chosen based on the needs for user, and that can be also set up centrally, I mean, on top of the government cloud within the statistical office infrastructure, or any distributed system in network operator side. And it's responsible for importing the CDR from the mobile network operator. It's going to process the data according to approved methodology, and that's what we did in NCSI. The data is stored as a result as aggregated and statistical indicator. So the aim of the project, as I said before, to produce a statistical indicator on tourism, people, and mobile to provide a proof of concept in order to make the necessary preparation and test for the assessment for full scale implementation. I mean, full scalability for the implementation of data, or I mean the statistical work. And that's it. Thank you for listening for this presentation. And if you have any question, we are ready to answer it.
So unfortunately, Majid can't take the questions from here, but this is why we have Kertu. And Kertu, the floor is yours.
Yes, thank you. And thank you for the opportunity to add to Majid's presentation and to show you some of the results we actually saw from the pilot project in Oman. And I would like to say that investigating the results and validating these are always the most interesting parts of the pilot projects because it's the same for us and for the clients as well, because this is when we can see the MPD to come to life. We can compare it to reference data, and also it usually reveals some very interesting stories. So let's start with domestic tourism statistics. Here is a simplified graph of daily domestic tourism trips. It's clear that you would expect to see a drop around the middle of March here if we're talking about 2020 data, because it's related to COVID-19 pandemic. So this is here and looks like expected. What else we saw here, and what was more surprising for us, was the sudden drop in the middle of January, where we basically saw that people were not moving at all inside Oman compared to usual days. And then we suspected that this might be a data issue, started looking into that, but what we found was that you really need to investigate the reference data, because we learned that on 10th of January, the Sultan of Oman for the past 50 years had passed. And because of that, the next days were declared to be public holidays in the whole country. So what people did was that they stayed at home and just took some time off and weren't moving around so much. And this is one of the examples of those unexpected events that is very difficult to, or the effect of which might be very difficult to measure from any other data sources, but is very well captured in mobile positioning data. So let's continue with inbound tourism statistics. Here you see the screenshot from the dashboard that basically concludes all the statistics generated within the pilot project. And right now we are looking at inbound tourism trips from Germany in the whole month of February 2020. So let's look at two areas. First, the northernmost Vilayat Kasab, and one in the south, Vilayat Salalah. If we look at the results on monthly level, which is a really common breakdown for many traditional data sources, we see that the numbers are quite comparable. But what didn't meet the reference data was the numbers in Vilayat Kasab, because the reference data suggested that the tourism counts there should be much lower than that. That's why we went to daily level again, and what we discovered was that the tourism patterns in Vilayat Kasab, they really look weird. It was very regular and also very high peaks in the number of tourism trips, but the number of nights spent in this area, it remained very low. And the reason for that was that those trips were made by cruise tourists who only came in for a short period of time. And since the cruise tourists don't need any accommodation, and also they don't need visa, they were not captured in the tourism statistics. So this was something that was, let's say, missed before using mobile positioning data, but it's still very valuable information for the tourism planners. And then if we think about the other example from Salalah, then it's weird to think that on monthly level, the number of tourists from Germany is almost the same, but the pattern is completely different, meaning that the Germans who actually go to Salalah area, they also spend more nights there, and that might result in spending more money in this area as well. So, and my last example here is about temporary population statistics. Again, two different vilayets. One above is a part of the capital city Muscat, Vilayet Seeb, and the one below is more like a countryside. It's Vilayet Garat. And if we look at the first 3 months of 2020, then we see quite like regular patterns for both of them. And of course, the city area has like higher temporary population during the working days, and completely the other way for this countryside area, which has more people visiting throughout the weekends. The next period here was the very first lockdown, and what happened was that people went to work remotely. Most likely they didn't want to be only in the cities, so they moved to countryside, and this is why the temporary population went higher in the countryside during this time. And lastly, you can see how when the restrictions were eased in Oman, and how people basically got back to the regular behavior, quite similar as before the pandemic. And to sum it up, I would say that these are just some examples showing why MPD is a very useful source for generating statistics. And thanks to the temporal and spatial granularity, we can see many behavior changes and patterns that might help the decision makers to be more informed and to make better decisions in their municipalities, for example. And as said, only a couple of examples, but there are many more, and I would be happy to discuss throughout the day. Thank you.
Thank you very much for all the presentations, and now we have 20 minutes for discussions. So I'm now happy to have any questions that the audience might have. So please raise your hand up there, and please introduce yourself and ask if you want to ask some specific person or it's like a broader question. Thank you.
Hello, Thomas, Statistics Lithuania. I have a question for Peter. So from official statistics perspective, if I was listening very carefully your presentation, you mentioned a few, I think, keywords, so population estimates. So can you elaborate a little bit if you used some kind of weighting, what kind of data sources you used for that, and how you went maybe data integration, different surveys used for that? Thank you.
Yes, I can tell you somewhat about it. The key is that we assume in the weighting that during the night, in working days, people are basically at home in their where they are registered. So basically what you do, you have the number of SIM cards during the night, you correct it for stationary devices, and there's the tricky aspects in it. Then you have a kind of corrected mobile dynamic SIM cards, and those you weight basically to the population activities. And you get a weight factor, you apply it in the next period. And the trick is always a little bit how you go with variation at real things. What's basically your baseline? So we have a standard weight model, but we benchmark it every time because you may have subtle changes in client sets. You should benchmark it every time under October, November to the population statistics again to correct for time series breaks. So basically the assumption is people are at night during working days at home, but the trick is always what is a normal working day period. Basically in Sweden you have known one from May till end of August. So that part we focused a lot on. And I think if I speak about standardization and things like that we need a standard, that are points we should agree on also as statistical community. What is the best period we reference the data to?
Any more questions? So until you think, I will ask some of my own as well. And maybe picking up from here on this standardization part, and as we have talked about previously with some of you as well. So, and also Fabio was presenting about these standards. So I would ask each of you separately, so what do you think, what would be the best way how the methodologies could be standardized in a way that it would be effective in the long run? So what would be the method to do that? So is it some kind of organizational? Should it be central through Eurostat, or what do you think? So let's start with Peter from the left, and then...
Oh, a little bit. Ideally, you want that everybody's doing exactly the same, but I think that's not so realistic. So, what I think there should at least come a kind of standardization a little bit about what is the STAR database. You have some companies who follow SIM cards for years, some only 24 hours. There should be a kind of standard about that. There should be a kind of a standard, I think, about the geolocation process. Do you need basically the triangular data or not? And you have a step, basically the relationship between SIM cards and populations. And I think there should also be a standard about documentation. We have basically now contracts with 2 MNOs. And for one, the documentation is okay. The other one, this is some improvement. So you need to agree, I think, at least on European level. Okay, and under these conditions, with these steps, then we can use the data.
But should it be done like each project separately, or there should be like overall like governing standards? I don't know, from Eurostat or some by other means. So what do you think on that side?
I think the best is that all persons, all statistical offices, and all operators and all subcontractors who work on the field work together, at least develop some standards about it, agree about some standard. I know there's a lot of competition and some issues about it, but that should be, I think, the way to go. And I think the tender is a quite good facility about it. But it has to come from the statistical offices, the subcontractors, the consultants, and the MNOs who are potentially willing to give this data for visual statistics. And I know we have to accept that there are some competitions, there are some other interests, but at least there should, on some base level, there should be some agreement about it. Yeah.
Okay. So Matthias, what do you think?
I think it's a very good opportunity for all parties. So I think I agree that everybody thinks in this field that they have the best method. So I think it's really a challenge to get to consensus. I think that's the biggest challenge here. I think obviously it's just like developing software. You need a modular structure and a good architecture. So you need a consensus on that. That's maybe even the most important. So just as I said, you have a geolocation algorithm. Most of the things are all actually quite standard in this processing. Also, I think there's not much innovation anymore here. I think this research is being done for 10 or 11 years. So I think it's really time to think about definitions. And if you look as a statistical office, it's like a GDP, you want to compare countries. So it's really, we have a tradition of standardization. standardization. So I think that's for official statistics, that's really important. It's just part of our business, you could say. So standardization and standardization also gives opportunities for companies like mobile phone operator, because there's an open, transparent method they can show to their customers what are they actually doing with their data. They can explain that they are doing it for good for society, because there's really a huge benefit for society there. Of course, the offices also, they can compare each other's data, so that's also saves them money, and it's very practical. And it's also good for Eurostat, because in the end they want to have a European overview of what's happening, and they want the standardization too. And to get to the answer also that who should do it, I think it's still, I think I wouldn't experiment on that. If you see how the system works now on national accounts, that you have several statistical offices that collect it and deliver it to Eurostat, I should choose for that option, because it's a proven way to do it. And if you would centralize it all, I think it would be quite a challenge, because every country has multiple operators, and then we have all member states, and then combine that centrally. That sounds like maybe a too big project. So, so I would stick to the standard way we use to make normal statistics, and then implement this new data source.
Yeah. So let's hear what the private companies think of it. So Kertu, what do you think?
Yeah, Matthias already said that everyone thinks they have the best methodology. So the answer to you would be just use Positium's methodology developed together with the University of Tartu for many, many years now. But really I agree with what has been said, and it's what we see on our daily work as well, that there needs to be some baseline, there needs to be some standards, rules, and so on, because what happens otherwise is that everyone is trying on their own, and in the end, the results are not comparable. You don't know if they have had the same kind of quality assurance and so on. So yes, it's a mix of things, I would say.
What about you, Mantas?
Yeah, I would also agree that from my short experience, I see that technology is ready, and methodology, and from discussions and presentations today, I see that there are questions of methodology that needs to be solved, but they will always be there. We can go as deep into the methodology as we want, and the questions, we will always have questions. What I see is what I also tried to tell in my presentation, that in these projects and in making statistics, we have a lot of different kind of players. All of them have very different interests. So I believe that the standardization should begin from actually understanding the expectations of each side, because mobile network operator have a lot of expectations for users and for statistical offices. They are afraid of being penalized. They also want to get revenue from such data, and these are legitimate expectations from their side. While there are commercial companies like Positium who already has the technology and can implement these solutions, they also have expectations to grow and expand. And from statistical offices, they are making data for the public good, but not always the people who should use this data understand how to use the data. So even if we standardize the methodology, it doesn't mean that the statistics will be used in a full potential. So I would raise a question not to how methodologically coordinate. I see that there are a lot of steps being done by Eurostat and others, and I feel quite positive about that. But I still think that we do not openly discuss the expectations from each side, especially from probably end user who will actually use this data.
Very correct. True that we always have to bear in mind what are the end users of those statistics that we produce and see their expectations, but also, well, all the stakeholders, of course. So let's see if we have some questions. Meanwhile, yes, over there, one question. So Siim.
Hi, Siim Esko from Positium. I want to address every one of you, and building on the previous discussion, how important was, since we are at the research conference, how important was research in your current project? What did you take as input from the research community? And all this history of Mobile Tartu conferences, and your expectation in the future, how you plan to cooperate with researchers.
Excellent question. So let's move the other way around now. So Mantas.
Okay, so to begin with, it's my first Mobile Tartu conference. So I'm still trying to get everything that I can. And in our project, as this was our first pilot project in Lithuania, so scientific touch was very important as we need to calibrate the methodology for Lithuania. And we had the period, also COVID period, which in data showed as very strange. We found a lot of strange things in the data that we analyzed, and it was very difficult to validate. So Positium's team from probably all the methodology team worked on this case to understand how to validate and how to be sure that the data is correct. So probably this one. And from scientific community, I'm also hoping to find new connections here in Mobile Tartu, because we also work with Statistics Lithuania and trying to start to begin working on mobile data. So probably all the methodology questions that Thomas are asking all of you in corridors are very important in the coming years.
Kertu?
Yeah, as it has been said many times today, the Positium Data Mediator, the platform we are using, has been developed together with the scientists, and there are many scientific processes that are used to make meaningful statistics out of MPD. So this is the case, but what you take from here, even today, like listening to the very first presentations, it's clear that no data set is perfect on its own. So I guess the main question is how to combine MPD with other data sets and how to make the quality even better in the future. Because this is what we have seen, that every new reference data set that you get from a new country especially makes people very excited because they want to compare, they want to analyze and understand more. And this is how it goes, I guess.
Yes.
Yeah, what I see in all those years is that it has been become from a small community to a really large community. You see almost every country is now investigating or wants to use mobile phone data. Also what you see is that the technology is now already there. Most questions about privacy and data protection have been addressed, and I think we're all convinced. But I think it's also a challenge to bring this message more broad to the public, because I think especially for the users of these data, everybody is using census data that has become normal, but this is like real-time census or like real-time or very recent tourism statistics, and to show really the value to the public. I think there still is a challenge, because if you say we're using mobile phone data, people still think it's being used for tracking or individuals. While the real value is there for society to get insights that is important for the development of society. So I think, and that's the next challenge.
If I may ask here follow-up questions, do you think that the research community maybe should engage also more with the end users to see how they use the data, and so
and easier visualizations, because I see these beautiful ArcGIS visualizations, but they are still not that open maybe for the average user that writes a policy on a city. So that's, I think, would be a next step to make this more available, and also to explain exactly how all these formulas and how all these methods work, so they can understand it better.
Yeah. And Peter?
Yeah, a lot of research to be done. I think, first of all, we started a little bit with comparing the process of the operators with some other processes known, among others developed by the statistical community. What I do see a lot of research possibilities in is a little bit more the model-based, how you can combine, even if you have the data on aggregated or low aggregation data with other specification. I was really surprised to hear that when I saw the second presentation this morning about a little bit the inequality in Sweden, they use basically same analyzers, same data sets to compare with, and they just use it for interpretation of a specific process, but we use the same data set just to check representativity and other things, and how do people travel to what, and where are the free taste houses and everything. So I think in that combination of combining these data, linking it, and also making it model-based, because you can do a lot of model-based estimations out of it. That if you know, okay, someone, that is the population, they travel to that, that's the income, we know from that part there's so many people, leisure houses, you can model a lot. And there is a lot of work to be done with the research community.
Yeah. So I understand that you have to come to the Mobile Tartu from Sweden in order to link the different researches and dealing with...
It's not the question. We have aggregated data, and I think that's a good thing, but there is a lot of things. If you really exploit these data good, you can come much further than just counting number of people there.
Yeah, true.
I would like to agree and add in, of course, the data on the map do not answer questions or do not help to make decisions for people who actually make these decisions. It should be much easier to understand, and less data. Less data is better data for the decision makers. In our project with Travel Lithuania, I still feel that we provide a little bit too much information, and we need another person in local government who can actually read and translate that data into some practical questions, like which public bathroom we need to renovate first, or do we need a road sign here or a kilometer away to attract more people into the municipality. So decision makers are making questions and decisions, very practical ones, and the data should help them, hopefully with as less as possible intermediate people who need to translate the data to the decision.
Yeah, totally agree with this one. And as we have come into this session, I'd like to thank all the presenters, and I think they all agree that if there are more questions, they can answer on their emails that you see on the slides. And we will, of course, continue discussion now on the following breaks. I would like to thank you once again for the excellent presentations, and let's give a round of applause to the presenters.